Welcome to Birken Forest Monastery's live stream. My name is Ajahn Sona, and this is an opportunity for questions and answers. And this is also Mother's Day, so let us celebrate. Let's have the first question, Pia.
Ajahn, our first question is from the live stream from Laura. Ajahn, at times I am dissatisfied with my home. What is the proper balance of caring for, maintaining, updating a home versus being content with basic living conditions?
Well, I would have to interrogate you further, Laura, to understand whether your obsessive-compulsive neatness or whether you're actually don't like to do housework, it's chaotic. So these are the extremes. So let's say at least that we can talk about the middle path in terms of your residence. And this is something a little for like monks. The ideal is to have there are duties to be done. And the monks are assigned duties, so they don't just ignore their environment. They are obliged to actually sweep on a daily basis to get rid of spider webs and various clutter to keep a clean and austere environment. Lay people are less obliged so because they like their things. But if the environment gets too cluttered, then it's a little problematic for the mind. Some people feel, and this is something to be investigated for people, is that they feel uncomfortable in a room that is not stuffed full of furniture and art and bric-a-brac. So one should ask oneself, why am I so uncomfortable with this? Is it that the external objects are giving me comfort and that my internal life is inadequate to give me comfort? So that's a question. Now, how far do you want to progress in your inner life? As your inner life grows richer, that you're less dependent on the outer sensory world around you. But it doesn't mean that you're oblivious to it or ignore it. So there was a story in the biography of Ajahn Chah about a monk at the Wat Nong Papong, Ajahn Chah's home monastery. And this monk was a Western monk. And every now and then, Ajahn Chah would go around and inspect the little dwellings that the monks live in. These are, in Pali, are called kutis, or we would say cabins. They're very small. They're just about 8 feet by 8 feet and minimal. And this monk had the impression that he should ignore the external world, etc. So when Ajahn Chah came around to inspect them, because they have to be kept up, monks come and go, and the abbot is responsible for the dwellings, making sure that they're maintained. Well, this monk's, half the roof was gone on this monk's kuti. Half of it had, and he asked this, the monk was in there, and he asked, where's the other half of the roof? He said, it blew away. And he said, well, why didn't you tell us about it? He said, well, I thought, I should be indifferent to that. He said, so Ajahn Chah asked him, when it rains, which side do you sit on? He says, I sit on the one with the roof. See, you're not indifferent to it. So that's a wrong indifference. Now, sometimes you have to shelter in a cave or something like that, or you have to be in a bus shelter or something like that to get out of the weather. Those are very temporary moments, but not how you should live. So in terms of your dwelling, you need to maintain it fully, make sure that it's not decaying or anything like that. And then you have to decide, are you working on your inner life? And it may help you to declutter somewhat and not be so dependent on the outside. But also, if you're not willing to do housework, clean it up and so forth, you might ask yourself whether you're just depressed, because this is a sign of depression, a lack of energy. And in monastic life, we are encouraged to be very energetic. So monks, typically, say in the International Forest Monastery where I trained, after the morning sit is at 3:30 in the morning. You get up at 3, and then you're sitting for about an hour and a half in a shared space, a sala, a meditation space. And then dawn comes, a bell rings, various chanting and bowing, and then immediately that we get up, we tidy the place up, and each monk takes a broom and sweeps communally. That hall is swept at least once a day. And everything is very, very neat, very kept in tip-top shape. So if the monks should do this, then also the householder should do that. Keep your house in tip-top shape and find some mindfulness and presence in that, and don't shun it. And if you're not enthused by that, then you might be a little bit depressed. And it's when you start doing your housework and so forth that it can lift that sense of depression and so forth. But because I don't know enough of the details about your particular situation, I don't know whether you're erring on the side of of redesigning your living room every 3 weeks, or whether you can't be bothered and you don't want to vacuum and it's going downhill. So without knowing that, I just give general advice to you. But this is good for everybody who's listening in terms of your attitude and relationship to your environment. Quite often these things are inherited from your family, from childhood. You're sloppy or you're obsessively neat and so forth. In monastic life, there's a group training, so you kind of get trained out of whatever your personal preferences or your personal habits were, quite often are put under stress, and you're not allowed to just follow your own whims. You have to cater to the rules of conduct and minor rules for monks and the standards of the monastery, and just let go of your own personal preferences for accumulating things or being sloppy or all of these things. So this is general advice. Yeah.
Our next question is from the live stream from Chris. Dear Ajahn Sona, how can I say no to people asking me to do things without aversion arising? I notice aversion, let it go, and then say yes to things I normally wouldn't. Any advice?
Yes, it's not aversion. It's the fact that you have not dealt with your inability to say no. And so there's some sort of feeling that a person, maybe this is a family trait or something where everybody had to be obliging. But it's not always the right thing to be obliging to everybody. Your life, you have your own value in your life. So the first thing you should tell yourself is, my life and my time is extremely valuable. And I hold it in high regard, because if I don't, nobody else will. So you hold your time as valuable. And it doesn't matter if you're just sitting on the porch, it's valuable. You don't have to justify why your life and your time is valuable. Nobody else gets to decide whether your life and time is valuable, only you. So that's the first thing, is to get clear about. And the second thing is to then start rehearsing your response to people who ask you to do things that you don't want to do. And so it's by practicing ahead of time, without anybody doing this, just it's like an actor going over their lines. What do you say to somebody who asks you? And then practice saying, I'm afraid I don't have time. Perhaps somebody else will be able to do this. You can also say that you have other priorities at the moment, that you're engaged in certain things that are valuable and can't be interrupted. And you have to say that with sincerity, because even if it means that you're just going to go have a nap or sit on the porch, it's not up to anybody else to decide whether that's a priority and a value to you. If it may be very important to you. And all that matters is that your time is important to you, and you don't have to justify it to anybody else. And if you don't feel like doing it, don't do it. And but rehearse this in a state of not having to empower yourself with anger or resentment. You don't have to be empowered. Say it in a neutral tone with neutral feelings, or even in a tone of friendliness with goodwill, and practice saying it with that emotion. So practice and practice and practice. And then when the time comes, you will deliver your lines like a great actor in a movie. But usually what we do is we rehearse the opposite. We rehearse resentment, which you are doing. You're resentful and angry. And then you're rehearsing the fact that you think you have to say yes anyway. So you've rehearsed that, and so you give yourself put yourself in a double bind where you don't want to do it, and yet something you feel obliged to do it. So remove yourself from that double blind. Say, I don't want to do these things, and I want to express that I don't want to do it. And I don't want to be angry about it, because I don't feel that anybody else should be able to make me angry by asking me to do things that I don't want to do. So rehearse the emotion and the words.
Our next question is from Angus in Cape Town, South Africa. How does one know that there is the cessation of consciousness if there is no knowing?
Well, the idea of knowing that there's cessation of consciousness is obviously it's good that you see logic. There's a logical problem there, and I don't know exactly what you're referring to there, but it may be the cessation of perception and feeling, which is a high state of the formless meditations or so forth. By the way, it's said that, in order to report on that, only the Buddha could report on that. Even the arahants couldn't assess that. And because now that's, say, the Abhidhamma or the commentaries, because they also have this logical quandary. How can you report on the absence of consciousness? You'd have to be conscious to know about it. But this is a regular event in, of course, our lives. We do it every night. We become unconscious. We go to sleep, and we're not always dreaming. So in dreamless sleep, we're unconscious. And you don't experience dreamless sleep. You only infer that you were asleep. So sometimes you fall asleep, and then you wake up, and you look at the clock, and you think, well, apparently I've been asleep for 3 hours. And there is no... It's not like you experienced it. You only infer it. So, by the way, the absence of consciousness can only be inferred, and it can only be inferred when you're conscious. So when you think about these things, some people are annihilationists, so they believe that when you die that your consciousness ceases. In that case, you won't experience it and you won't infer it, because it requires consciousness to infer that you must have been without consciousness. And so you can't experience the absence of consciousness. You can only infer it afterwards. So I would have to know more detail about exactly whether you're talking about high states of Buddhist meditation, or whether you're talking about the experience of cessation of consciousness in the annihilationist idea of death, etc. But that's a little bit of just logic. Okay.
Our next question is from A.S. in Florida, United States. Your book, Life is a Near-Death Experience, is a treasure to be read again and again and again. Thank you. Question. Ajahn Chah was well cared for in his dying years. What is in place to care for aging monastics in the forest tradition?
Each monastery and each monk's situation will be different, but there is an obligation by the rules of conduct for monks, so the Vinaya, that once a monk is ordained, all other monks have an obligation to take care of them if they fall ill. And the Buddha himself, in the early days, so before the rule was laid down, the Buddha arrived at a monastery and there was a monk who was very, very ill and not being tended by the other monks. So the Buddha himself and his attendant Ananda cleaned that monk up who was lying in his own mess and made sure he was given the best medicines and nourished and liquids, etc. And after the Buddha came out and talked to the monks and said, every monk who is sick should be tended as if it was me, the Buddha. So from now on, you must tend to sick monks. You have left the household life. You've left the family life. The family and household will not be attending on you. So you need to take care of each other. So this is the obligation of all monks, and particularly perhaps the ordaining teacher. So if the student of a monk, there's a formal transaction called taking dependence, and you're obliged to take dependence on a senior monk who is more than 10 years in the robes. And that dependence lasts for at least 5 years. During that time, that teacher is responsible for you, and you are also responsible for that teacher. You're said to be both each other's burden. So the teacher shall be my burden, and the teacher says the student shall be my burden, because other people can be a burden to you. So if somebody else is sick and you got to take care of them, that's a burden. And we accept it. We accept the burden of relationship. And so this is the obligation, and it's done to some degree. And I was at Ajahn Chah's monastery in the last few years of his life, and I went regularly every week to visit him. When he was in a wheelchair, he could not speak. He was being fed through a tube which went through his nose, and a series of monks, 6 monks in pairs, took care of him 24 hours a day, and they'd built a separate little building for him, and the monks massaged him and washed him and changed his robes and fed him and all of those things. And this went on for some years because he had a very severe, some sort of brain illness. And also the entire monastery that I was in, the International Forest Monastery, would go in a vehicle, in a bus, over every week and just chant for him. We would chant for half an hour for him, kind of types of chants that are healing chants. So I was extraordinarily impressed with it. I don't think you could get better care on this planet than he was given. So that's how we take it. We take it seriously that we take care of each other and are obliged to.
Our next question is also from the live feed from Carlian in Belgium. Ajahn, how can I overcome the shock of trauma and extreme betrayal? I can see it has a purpose. Yes, I grow, but the loneliness and grief is sometimes hard to deal with. I always felt different.
Yeah, this is why we have Dhamma, because if we didn't, we would be hopelessly trapped in grief and resentment, and we'd be heartbroken. And this is this expression, this is how, when we're betrayed, we become brokenhearted. And so it is only by realizing that we should not depend on other people for our well-being and happiness, because other people are sometimes reliable and sometimes not. sometimes we trust them and they turn out to be untrustworthy. And we have to clearly understand this, that we cannot lean against another person, because if they step away, we fall over. Now, this is whether we like it or not. And people think, well, only monks have to go off and be on their own and separate themselves and not be in intimate relationships and so forth. Well, monks do that, and it's somewhat against ordinary human nature. We actually love to depend on each other. We love to be intimate with each other and so forth. This is the nature of being human, but it's also the nature of the disastrous experience of betrayal, of loss, of grief. So a person sometimes, while they're alive, they change their mind about their relationship to you and just leave. And that's can be heartbreaking. On the other hand, of course, they can just die, right? Or they change so drastically that they're not the same person. So they become very ill or mentally ill or things like this. So this is reality, and this we have to see with very clear eyes, that we cannot depend on anything like this. It doesn't mean that we're cold and aloof. You can remain warm-hearted, and it's a very unsatisfactory life to live in coldness because you're afraid of betrayals or somebody will not respond with warmth to you. You can generate warmth, that is loving kindness to all beings, without concern for whether they return it or not, or whether they stay the same or not. So it's possible, and you should investigate this. This is called loving kindness. So the gratification that you got in that relationship, which you are now heartbroken about, can be restored. You can get the warmth, and a much more reliable warmth and positive feeling back, without putting yourself in the jeopardy of relying on a reciprocal response. Nobody has to give it back to you. You get it by radiating it out from you. Goodwill, loving kindness, friendliness is gratifying to the person who radiates it. They don't need it back. And so you heal the heart, you heal your emotions, you heal the memories. By the way, I suggest that you do not bring the person to mind, whoever it was that betrayed you. There's a kind of a psychological language that says you must deal with this, that you must somehow make your peace with it or get over it by bringing this up and thinking about that person. The Buddha gives some advice about that. He suggests one tactic that he suggests is do not bring that person to mind. If you can't bring that person to mind without feeling sorrow and grief and anger and resentment and betrayal and all these negative emotions, don't bring them to mind. And lots of people don't realize they're allowed to not bring somebody to mind. It's like bringing an enemy into your house. You don't have to bring an enemy into your house. You don't. So don't bring them into your mind. And it's not that you're not dealing with it. You are dealing with it. It's a fully conscious decision. Do not bring that person to mind. These are the exact instructions of the Buddha. And it's an option when you can't bring the person to mind with compassion or loving kindness or equanimity. You don't bring them to mind, because whenever you do, only negative things arise, and that becomes a habit, and that becomes you suffer unnecessarily. Now, in order to do this, you need to make a strong commitment. You need to write that person's name down, put it in an envelope, then write a date on that envelope, the earliest date when you think you could possibly bring that person to mind with at least equanimity. And make a solemn vow not to think 1 second of thought about that person. And it'll be the first week that it's hard to do. But after the first week, if you really commit to this, you'll find that the mind has been told clearly, do not bring that person to mind, and you will be free of that. Next, you need to fill in the hollow space that you're experiencing. So start practicing loving kindness without, just walk through the shopping mall and walk down the sidewalk. All those beings, just radiate loving kindness for them. You don't have to know anything about them, but they're all struggling in existence. They all are facing death just like you are. We're all in the same boat, so may they all be well, and you'll feel that this hollowness, everything is alleviated. So these are the strategies about how to get over this. Okay, next question.
Our next question is from Gabrielle in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. Dear Ajahn, the biography of Ajahn Chah, Stillness Flowing, speaks of how asking for forgiveness was a ritual practiced in Ajahn Chah's monasteries. It is a way of, quote, erasing bad things from the mind, unquote. On page 282, there is a note referring to defunct Kama. I am considering asking forgiveness from a brother for the harms I caused while he was very young. Whether he forgives isn't as important as self-forgiveness. Any advice?
Yes, this is a part of regular life, and not just in Ajahn Chah's monasteries, but throughout the Buddhist world. It's an obligation, and you practice it again and again. And you come to, if you're leaving a monastery, you go to the senior monks and you ask for forgiveness, because, and you ask, Venerable Sir, please forgive me for anything I may have done through body, speech, or mind, intentionally or unintentionally. And then that monk is instructed to say, I forgive you, and may you also forgive me. Because this is what happens in human relationships. They're left undone and unfinished, hanging in space. And sometimes it's the last time you ever see a person. So it's quite often good, because we give offense without intending to. We offend each other. We move in a way that is a problem for another person. We walk in a way that's a problem for another person. We eat in a way that the other person is offended by. We can't help but offend somebody some way through our thoughts, our speech, our action, and most of it's unintentional, and occasionally it's intentional. We intend to offend, but we should say, I want to ask forgiveness because I don't want I don't really want to increase suffering in this world. But we do this because we don't know any better. So it's good to do that. And again, you're right. You don't need your brother's forgiveness in order to be free. But if you have the opportunity, and by the way, often people feel that they need to go and ask for forgiveness, but the person not available, they don't want to hear it, etc. So you don't actually need to do this in order to go free from your sense of debt over having done something offensive. But if you can, and the person agrees to this, then it's a skillful thing to do. And they may or may not be able to forgive you. That's their problem. So it is best to forgive everybody who offends us, because otherwise we just burden ourselves unnecessarily. Why hold a grudge? Let it go. So yes, if you can, Gabrielle, go and ask for forgiveness, but at the same time, grant yourself forgiveness, no matter what your brother may say.
Our next question is from the live feed from Clay in Denver, Colorado, United States. Dear Ajahn, should one practice mudita for those who are finding happiness in unskillful ways? When I try to share their happiness, I feel as if I'm complicit or encouraging the unskillful actions. Is it advisable to instead feel compassion for the future suffering of these individuals?
Yes, that's a question asked by people who think about such things. And I want to define mudita. Mudita is sympathetic joy. So when another person is happy and enjoying themselves, then you can celebrate their happiness. You feel joyful for them. You sympathize with their joy, and you also participate in the joy that they're happy. And this is quite a reasonable question to ask, but cruel things, etc. So how do we celebrate that? Well, we don't celebrate their cruelty or their lack of skill, but they are, and eventually that it will all catch up with them, and they will have great infliction of pain on others and getting enjoyment out of it. It will all catch up to them, of course. But the moment of joy in any being's life, if there's a moment of joy, we celebrate the emotional happiness. We celebrate a moment of happiness in a being's life. But at the same time, we're not stupid. We realize that they're doing something very unskillful, and that they will have a price to pay for that in the universe, the karmic universe. So we can do both. So we can celebrate that a person had a moment of happiness, but because it was based on very unskillful actions, that they will in future suffer, and we have compassion for them. By the way, compassion is not grief for them. It is the wish that they may get over their ignorance. They do this out of ignorance, and they're going to bring great suffering on themselves, and they don't know any better. So we are radiating goodwill to them because it will catch up, and it'll be terrible suffering for them. And we know that if they'd known that, if they really truly understood that, they wouldn't have done it. But they don't understand that. They do it out of ignorance. So we can have both emotions. We can have mudita, loving joy in the joy of others, but at the same time, it's not a stupid emotion. It's a wise emotion. Yes, a moment of relief, but at the same time, may you not suffer. You do things because you know not any better. Yeah.
Our next question is from the live feed from Anonymous in the United States. Can an arahant, with or without psychic abilities, tell if another monastic or lay person has obtained arahantship or any of the other levels of enlightenment?
This is a good question, and it's well answered in the suttas and in the commentaries and in the Abhidhamma as well. So an arahant. An arahant is a fully enlightened person, first stage of enlightenment. They have finished their round in samsara. They have attained final nibbana. And this is the exalted condition. This is where a person leaves the round of samsara, which is fueled by ignorance. Now, so this is the height of spiritual attainment. Can that person know if another person is enlightened? Not necessarily. Can some arahants know that, if they have a special capacity for embracing mind with mind? Yes. But we have some examples of arahants. So there's a sutta called the Gosinga Wood Sutta. So 3 monks have decided to live in a very lovely grove of trees called the Gosinga Grove. And they're very well behaved. They only like to meditate. And there's a warden who guards the gate to the place, and nobody disturbs them. They need to go on alms round to the local village to get their food on a daily basis, which they do. And whoever gets back first sets up the eating arrangements for the others, and they dwell together in perfect politeness and harmony. And they do their own practice. And time goes by, weeks, months, And then one of them questions the other about their practice. And then after the conversation gets going, they realize, well, he's an arahant. And then that one questions the one that questioned them, and then he realizes, oh, he's an arahant as well. So all three turn out to be arahants. But they don't know this ahead of time. They've been living with each other, but they don't know that each of them are arahants. So that's a classic description of not knowing this. The other side of this formula is that one of lower attainment, a person, say, of the first stage of enlightenment, can't know the mind of a person of higher attainment. So even if they have psychic capacity, they can't know that another person who has a more advanced state of enlightenment, they can't know that. You can know in the downward direction. So a person of the second stage of enlightenment could know the mind of a person of the first stage. A person of the third stage could know the mind of a person of first and second stage. A person of the fourth stage could know the lower three stages. But a person of the second stage could not embrace directly, psychically know that an arahant is an arahant. So this is the nature of the world. It makes good sense. Is like you can know what it's like to be a child, but a child can't know what it's like to be an adult, because it only works in one direction. And a person who's more advanced in mathematics knows what it's like to be in first-year mathematics, but a first person in first-year mathematics doesn't know what it's like to be in fourth-year mathematics. So in this sense, that you can see downward, but you can't see upwards. Yeah. And not in all cases can you see downwards. So it's not the case that just because a person is enlightened that they have the capacity to embrace the mind of another. Yeah.
Our next question is from the live feed from Brad. Hello, Ajahn Sona. What are the benefits of the communal duties lifestyle of Ajahn Chah's tradition compared to other traditions that emphasize that less? Why would one choose and benefit from that?
Yeah, that is the particular genius, I think, of Ajahn Chah. Quite a remarkable fellow. He had very little in the way of formal education in terms of what we would call education. I think he went to grade 2 or grade 3 or something. At the time, the northeast of Thailand was one of the poorest areas of Thailand, and very little opportunity for anything except rice farming or monasticism. So he did get a good education because he became a novice. And when you enter the Sangha, the formal ordained Sangha, you will be expected to learn the suttas and the rules of conduct for monks, and a great demand on a young person, maybe 12 years old, suddenly has to act like an adult. There is no playing. You don't play soccer and run around and get in trouble and stuff. It's over. Your childhood is over when you enter the robes. And so he was raised with that. So that's a profound education. But he also had a lot of intuition about human nature and how things get done. And so his emphasis was on strong community obligation. You do have community obligations to each other. And he designed these systems so you cooperate, that you attend meetings on a regular basis, that you participate in cleaning the place and any building projects and so forth, and that you attend all the talks given by the senior monks or abbots in a very respectful and demanding way, and including tests of your patience, which include all-night sittings once a week. So you're up every morning at 3:00, and then one day a week you get no sleep. You sit up all night with the group and attempt to meditate through the night. These are very strong demands on a person, and this what it does is produces a very harmonious sangha that is, and that's a very powerful unit. In some ways, it's more powerful in individuals because we can see as Ajahn Chah's, the monks who were trained in that system have come to the West. We have branch monasteries and associate monasteries all over the world, and we regularly get together and cooperate and so forth. The Buddha praised this. He said how the Sangha is strengthened by meeting together frequently, meeting in harmony and departing in harmony. But regular meetings is what is necessary. And if you're not trained in this system, you don't know how to do that. And you might, there's a lot of people who go into the monastic life because they want to be on their own and meditate. And so they don't have access to this, even though the Buddha praised this. And there are group duties, there are communal duties. So the Ajahn Chah emphasized this and made a very powerful kind of form of practice, which has spread throughout the world. And you're gaining the benefit of this right now, because I'm taking time, and we organize here at the monastery. It takes a lot of cooperation, effort, learning, participation in order to even make such a broadcast as well. And regular facilities are built for the Sangha and the ordained Sangha and also the lay community. And this requires a lot of cooperation, a lot of ability to put aside your own opinions and cooperate with the group. The other side of this is that Ajahn Chah would at times just say, okay, no more meetings, no more group events. Everybody go off to your own little cabin and meditate and see how you are on your own. This could go on for months. So now you're suddenly, you have to practice on your own. And by the way, so in these forest monasteries, there's really nothing else to do. There was virtually no books there either. It's not like you just read a novel or distract yourself. You're in an small empty cabin, and that's all you have all day long. So you're not talking to anybody. You're not visiting anybody. There's no group meetings. There's nothing else to do but meditate, walking, sitting, standing, lying down. And so he was also trying to develop the other side of you, the one who can manage in solitude and manage in a group. And some people are very good at managing in solitude. Some people are very good at managing in a group. And some people can do both. And some people can do neither. Okay, next question.
Next question is from the live feed from Ellen in Seattle. Would Ajahn please speak about Buddha nature, what Theravada believes?
Buddha nature is primarily a phrase used in the Mahayana schools, and the idea that ultimately at the there's an intrinsic awakened nature which is covered over by defilements and so forth. But the Theravada does not speak of Buddha nature. I think the primary drive in the Mahayana school about this emphasis on Buddha nature is that there is a vow that is quite frequently repeated in the Mahayana school that all beings I vow to liberate. They have an idea of universal liberation, and that one would either delay one's enlightenment or somehow remain available to beings until all beings are enlightened, all beings are liberated. In order for that undertaking to be reasonable means that there must be a potential in all beings to be liberated. Otherwise, a futile task. This is a later idea, and it's not present in the early teachings of the Buddha. The Buddha never said he's here to liberate all beings, or advocated that one should remain behind to liberate all beings. The idea that he was a bodhisattva, and then he arrives at Buddhahood and teaches, and then passes out of samsara and is no longer available. One of the things he said just before he died is, "After my death, neither gods nor humans will see me." So the early teachings, the advocacy of the early teachings of the Buddha in the Theravada is that one should pursue arahantship, and that along the way, you may in fact benefit many, but not all. So the Buddha comes, it says, "I come for the benefit of many," but he never says, "I come for the benefit of all." He doesn't imagine universal salvation. The other area is that the way the Buddhists think is, and the Buddha talks about, is that there are incalculable beings in this universe. That he says on a number of occasions that there are incalculable numbers of world systems. So in modern cosmology, we have a vast idea of the universe. The universe is staggeringly, and this is only recent, say in the last 100 years or so. And it's even now we're perceiving billions of galaxies. So it's staggering, the immensity and the possibility of being inhabitants of other other aspects of the universe. So the Buddha was talking about this in the 5th century BC and took it as a matter of course, and that he said, I understand this. They're incalculable numbers of beings. And there have been unknown numbers of Buddhas have arisen and passed away over time. And sometimes they're universes apart. Sometimes a universe will go by with no Buddha. And then there might be 4 or 5 in a single world system, but separated by centuries or millennia. So if it's the case that there's still, after all those Buddhas have risen and passed away, that there's still incalculable or innumerable numbers of beings, it doesn't look like the idea that all beings shall ultimately attain nirvana. It doesn't mathematically stack up. So these are fairly strong differences between the schools. And so this is the difference between the early Arahant school and the Mahayana school. And there's sometimes, the early school has no mention of the Mahayana or this tradition, but the Mahayana, of course, talk about the early school, and they have to solve this problem. Okay, the reason why they talk about the early Theravada is because they're later, and why these early teachings don't talk about the Mahayana because it wasn't in existence. So there is there are political matters going on here. As in various religions, we see that it is human nature to start to hold views and to be in conflict with as sort of schisms and sects within each school. This is human nature. It's not necessarily Buddha nature, but it's human nature. So this has happened in the Buddhist schools. They're not all in harmony. They don't agree on things because they are humans. And it is human nature to disagree and to get strange ideas, and sometimes you're right and sometimes you're wrong. So don't imagine that somehow because something is said as a lofty truth, that it is a lofty truth. It is not necessarily a lofty truth. Yeah.
Our next question is from the live feed from Ariel. It's hard finding a good teacher in person and finding like-minded people. Would it be advised to go alone on the path, or will this hinder my progress?
Well, that is the advice of the Buddha. It is better to go alone than with a fool for company. But surely you can find somebody who is not a fool. They may not be the most exalted, but they are trying and open to positive things, and they have some positive information and also are moving in the right direction. So that person it might be advantageous to associate with them. But yes, there are times, and it's very important to know that there are times when you simply have to say no. You have to separate from people who make you say no again and again. When you have to say no to them again and again, it might be time to leave, separate yourself. So you find people who you are not having to say no to all the time. And believe me that it's very important to say no sometimes, very important. Lots of people harmonize with people who are very unskillful or downright evil because they just want company. But the company of fools will drag you down, and it's best to be lonely and be good at the same time. So yes, it is very important that sometimes you must go alone. But there are good people, there are wise people on this planet, and these days with media and so forth, you can usually find somebody. Yeah. Okay, another question.
Mm-hmm. Ajahn, this may be our final question. It's from Maria from Serbia. Dear Ajahn, can you please tell us more regarding the forthcoming retreat you will be leading? Why kasinas are so rarely talked about, and what are the benefits of kasina meditation?
Yes, so this is a little information about this upcoming retreat. This is something that is not regularly taught in retreats for lay people or even for monastics. It is embedded, particularly embedded in the later commentaries. But the Buddha does mention these things, and there are four what we call elements: water, fire, earth, and air. And there are four primary colors which are found in nature, and that is the blue, red, yellow, and white. And these are called kasinas. They are reduced to their pure essence as meditation objects. And they're primarily used for the cultivation of samadhi, the eighth factor of the Eightfold Path, for the purification of the mind, for undistracted absorption, which increases the power of the mind to not be scattered. So it unifies the mind. You take elements to unify the mind. And the elements are probably from observation of humans in general, that the humans in general respond to the air and the water and the fire and the wind. Earth, air, fire, and water. Wind. Water. Let's get this straight. And these primary colors. So when you step out into a vast blue sky, notice the effect. When you look at a deep, luscious red rose, notice the effect. When you look at a yellow lily, notice the effect. When you look at a field of snow or white clouds, notice that humans respond to this. So they are using this. They've noted this response, and it pushes you in a very restorative, therapeutic, healthy direction. It can restore the mind, strengthen the mind, etc. So they have cultivated some practices around these. So this is what I want to spend some time communicating. I've done retreats or given retreats on almost all of the mainstream topics of meditation now. So this is one area that is very rarely done, and so it's time to say something about it at least. And this will be a 5 or 6 day retreat. Yes, in June, and what will be the date of the
18th to 13th. 8th.
So June 8th to the 13th. Stay tuned, and it's a live No, it's it's a live retreat. So you participate online with this, and we'll give you instructions about how to set it up at home. And there'll be a number of ways to support your practice during this retreat, okay? Yes, so I will now hand over to Pia to conclude this talk with further news and updates.
Thank you, Ajahn. As Ajahn just mentioned, we will be having another virtual retreat, June 8th through the 13th. Tomorrow morning, Pacific time, we will be sending out a newsletter with a link to the registration form. You can also go to our website, Birken.ca, and at the top you will see a link to the Natural Elements in Meditation retreat. And all the details are there as well. Next week, we will not be having our live stream, but instead a Dhamma talk by Ajahn Sona at the same time, 4 p.m. Pacific time. Thank you, everyone. Have a good week.